And hello, I think we are live. Hello to Susan and Natalie and Tish and Catherine. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello. Welcome to Newcastle-upon-Tyne. Hello, Elizabeth. Hope you're well. And Cynthia. Hello. Suhail. Hello. So yeah, might get a bit of local flavour before the tour starts in about 10 minutes. Here on Grey Street.
Obviously, when that's it's going to be a different
Alan Steinberg, hello. And Alice, hello. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Hope everyone's good. Yeah, I've had a great day of filming in Northumberland today. Been around a few towns here. Well, towns north of here, that is. It's a stream.
street.
Huh?
But one street.
Is it just live stream?
It's just general, like people walking down the street, just being drunk and glaring.
Something like that. Depends what Newcastle gives me
No, but what's
today.
the content that you stream?
Where do I stream? It's a YouTube channel.
No, but what's the YouTube channel? What's the content of your YouTube channel?
I go around towns and cities, do tours.
That's cool. It's a nice street.
Nice
It's my
street.
birthday.
It's your birthday.
It's my birthday.
No way, really?
What's hula?
Well, happy birthday.
Look at this.
Awesome.
I've got like a badge and everything.
I see, yeah.
Yeah, so
Have you had a good day?
I'm a little bit drunk, but yeah, I've had a good birthday.
Yeah.
I was wondering what you were recording.
Yeah.
This is the person of Newcastle, like what you're recording.
Yeah. It's a great city.
Yeah. Enjoy.
You too.
Have a nice day. See you later.
You too. Yeah, so that was nice. A lady celebrating her 40th birthday, yeah? I think she was a Geordie, and yeah, they can be quite friendly. You never know when they're going to be overly friendly sometimes, but that's all good. It's all good. Exactly, Elizabeth. Yeah, you should see this place on a Friday night. It is quite the sight. Hello, Hactos. And Dawn Bradman, hello. It's Morton Hargett's birthday. Oh, no way. Oh, that's he's 64. Wow. I love a bit of aha. Shaquille, hello. Welcome to Newcastle. I'm starting the tour in 5 minutes, in case anyone's wondering. I'm just making sure everything is up and running. I'm assuming everything is okay with the audio and whatnot. and it looks like there's no screen, which I had an issue with it last time, for those of you who are in Truro. And Deirdre, hello. Amy Winehouse's birthday. Oh, that's sad. But yeah, if anyone's wondering about the interesting screen thing that happened in Truro, I think the fix was just to download an older version of Streamlabs. So sometimes taking a step back is to take a step forward, if that makes any sense. But then Streamlabs is a law unto itself. Just one of those things. You saw Newcastle City Hall in the 80s? Oh wow. Actually, I saw AHA in, I think it was 2007 or thereabouts. It was their ending on a high note tour. Oh, Jared had that as well. Oh. Well, if it's still happening to him, you can tell him the answer is to download an older version of Streamlabs. Oh, what's up, Jim? Hello, by the way. Oh, was that a one-off? Oh, good. But yeah, if anyone's interested, I went to Berwick-upon-Tweed today, and then I went to Alnwick, and then I went to Morpeth for some filming for the 4K videos. And so they're all beautiful market towns. And Alnwick's got the castle, of course, as well. It's nearly time to start. I'm just keep an eye on the clock, and we'll make a move. You can probably hear some local ambience in the background as well. So it's one of the perks of being in Newcastle. Ah, pizza punks, yeah. Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you. Well, we should probably get started. It is 6:30 UK time, so I'll just do the old flip the camera and I'll say hello and greetings. My name is Alex, a.k.a. 4K Explorer, and yeah, I'm the one who does all the filming for the videos that you see on the 4K side of things, but I've also branched out into some live virtual walking tours like this one, and yeah, it's basically a chance for me to actually talk and give you a narrated look at where we're going. I was on a platform called heygo.com for quite some time, but that sadly closed in April of this year, but we've since taken it over to YouTube Live. And to that end, just a couple of things to let you know. First off, I should say the usual thank yous to everyone who has donated on the various means. There's the super chats, of course, and there's also PayPal, buy me a coffee, and it's these little donations that make this all possible. So thank you everyone to whom that applies. Of course, there's no obligation in any case, and the idea is, yeah, just to have a chilled out walk around Newcastle and tell you about the various landmarks and the history behind it. So also there's an option for taking screenshots. There's details for that in the description below if that's of interest. And so where to begin? So we are, of course, in the great city of Newcastle-upon-Tyne. I'm starting the tour on a very iconic street. So this is Grey Street, and that is named after the man on top of that column, who I'll get into shortly. The street itself, this is an area of the city known as Granger Town, and there's some more local ambience for you there. And oh, thank you, Dawn. Thank you. So yeah, so I won't go in direct chronological order. I'll just talk about the various elements of the history as we go. So this is really, this street here is basically from the 19th century. It was laid out by Richard Granger, who was responsible for a lot of these fine streets here in Newcastle, as typified by these various four-storied stone buildings that you see, including there's the Theatre Royal with the columns, which we'll see very shortly, and party with a birthday girl, well, maybe. And yeah, so yes, we were in Granger Town. It's a symbol of the wealth that was accrued by Newcastle from throughout many centuries. It was, of course, a town initially, and then it was given city status in the late 19th century. But it, for many centuries, had a monopoly on the coal industry. It was shipping coal all over the country. And it's also an origin for a certain phrase, taking coals to Newcastle, being like a, similar to selling ice to an Eskimo. It's kind of like a, in this case, it's taking coals to Newcastle is sort of like a pointless task, because Newcastle is one that provided coals for everyone else. And here we have the Theatre Royal, which opened, I believe, in 1837, the same year that Queen Victoria came to the throne. And these very nice neoclassical columns that you see. Now we are on Grey Street, so I should tell you about the man to whom it is named after. And that is, of course, Charles Grey, the second Earl Grey. And if you love tea like I do, then that'll get your taste buds flowing already. I believe he had a little something to do with tea, but he had a much more significant contribution to history. So he was from Northumberland, which is the county that this used to belong to, but then they tinkered with all the counties in 1974. But anyway, so he came, and he eventually became Prime Minister between, I believe, 1830 and 1834. And there are a couple of significant things that he did during his time. One was that he authored the Reform Bill, and I don't want to get too into the politics thing, because it can be a bit of a dry subject, but in short, it was a means of making the democratic process more democratic by giving the big towns and cities the vote, kind of thing. Whereas prior to him coming along, there'd be this thing where various towns, no matter how small, would send 2 members to Parliament, and it was weighted in such a way that it favoured the gentry. Whereas when Charles Earl Grey here came along, he changed all that with his Reform Bill in 1832. But there's another bill that doesn't get talked about as much for some reason, which baffles me, and that is the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, which is of course a huge deal. Of course, William Wilberforce was the one who was responsible for the Slave Trade Act of 1807, which abolished the triangular slave trade, but it didn't abolish slavery itself. But the 1833 Slavery Abolition Act abolished slavery itself in most of the British Empire, and that man up there was the Prime Minister at the time that that bill passed. So, and that's something to be proud of, I think, there. Also, he had 15 children, by the way. So you could say that the column is quite an appropriate monument in more ways than one. But anyway, so let's move on to Granger Street. So geographically, by the way, we're in the heart of the city centre of Newcastle. If you're wondering, we will see, of course, the River Tyne. I've saved that till the end of the walk because we might be able to get some nice shots of the various bridges there. And as the sun may start to set, but we'll see how we go. But again, so this is another street that's part of Granger Town. Again, this style of architecture became known as what was it called again? Geordie, Tyneside Classical. That's it. Again, the fine stonework that you see, all about 4 stories high, and you'll have to ignore any colourful language if you can overhear any of that. But it's just another day in Newcastle, so there with. So yeah, so I say we'll get to the River Tyne, but we've got a few things to get to along the way. So first off, I should give you some bearings, because we are. Oh, Bolivar beats him 24 children, all illegitimate. Yeah, he was quite a historical figure as well. So yes, we are, I believe, about 275 miles north of London, in the most northerly city in England. It's just a fraction north of Carlisle, which is west of here. And no cars on this street. Yeah, it's pedestrianised up to this point. There's a bollard to the right, so which is always nice if you're walking and filming. So yeah, so we are in a city of a population of, I believe, about 300,000, give or take. But of course it grew very much during the 19th century, but going way back, there was one man who came to be associated with Newcastle, or well, its predecessor, which was a Roman settlement called Pons Aelius, but it was actually just a bridge initially. So Emperor Hadrian, in I believe circa 122 AD, ordered a bridge to be built across the River Tyne. Oh, Central Arcade's beautiful Victorian shopping street. Absolutely, yeah. There's no shortage of beautiful Victorian shopping streets here, I can tell you that. And so, yeah, so he came in circa 122 AD, had a bridge built, and then there was a fort built, and then there was, of course, there was a wall built, very famous wall built by Hadrian, which started actually in Wallsend, an appropriately named town just slightly east of here, which is where Sting comes from, by the way. So if anyone wonders why Sting, of the Police fame, always sings in that funny, almost Jamaican sounding accent, it's not Jamaican, it's Geordie. So there we are. And so yeah, the wall starts at Wallsend, as it were, or maybe you should say it ends at Wallsend, and it stretches to I believe Bonus-on-Solway. It's a village near Carlisle on the northwestern corner of England. And I think now you can take a left into Big Market. I'm not going on its side, it's literally a Big Market, which is some type of barley grain, I believe, because there was a medieval market here at one point selling grain, and the Northumbria police are out in force tonight, it seems. And not after me, are they? Also, if you can hear me over those sirens, there's some lyrics here from the famous song that's used on the football grounds called Blade and Races. So it goes, "Ah, me lads, you should have seen us cannon, passing the folks along the road just as they were stunning, with lots of lads and lasses there, all with smiling faces, going along the Scotswood Road to see the Blade and Races." So yeah, so Newcastle is a city with one football team, and it's a very passionate football team as well. They play in black and white, and that's soccer for anyone who's not from Britain. What did I do, Elizabeth? Wouldn't you like to know? But yeah, maybe I've given the police a slip just now. So yeah, they can get quite busy in Newcastle, I'll say that. And now, just looming into the shot is Newcastle Cathedral. Now, it wasn't always a cathedral. It was only upgraded as such from a parish church in, I believe, 1882, concurrent to when it became a city. Because, of course, Queen Victoria made it that city status wasn't dependent on just having a cathedral, but rather it was discretionary, which allowed some of the big towns that made it big in the Industrial Revolution could become rightfully cities. Newcastle was one such in the 1880s, and so the parish church became a cathedral. We'll get a closer look at it. And also, in the background, you can already see the castle to whom Newcastle is named after, as it were. But again, I will give you a closer look as we get to that as well. So, but what you can see now is the Lantern Tower. This great tower up top of the cathedral. So the cathedral, well, the church as it was originally, this was finished in the mid 14th century, but the Lantern Tower was added a little bit after that, about 100 years after that, and it had a very specific purpose because there was a flame that would burn up there, and that would help to guide the ships down the River Tyne. It would help them to navigate. And this was the parish church of St Nicholas. Nicholas being the patron saint of sailing ships, I believe, as well as the Christmas guy, of course. Yeah, very iconic cathedral, made slightly more iconic by the fact that the castle is right there. Well, the castle keep at least. So, yeah, there's a good looking clock on the cathedral as well. So Newcastle wasn't always known as Newcastle, of course. Oh. So, oh. So just chiming for the 3/4 of an hour there. So yeah, so the Romans called this Pons Aelius. Aelius, by the way, was the family name of Hadrian, so essentially meant Hadrian's Bridge. And then, of course, the Romans abandoned Britain in the 5th century, and then the Anglo-Saxons came. And when they settled in this part of the British Isles, they called this place Monkchester. Of course, the Chester alluding to the fort, the Roman fort, and Monk maybe to do with the fact that there were some monasteries, Saxon monasteries here along the Tyne. Of course, there's a very famous monastery on the holy island of Lindisfarne, a fair bit north of here, just off the mainland, but that's another story. But then the Normans came, and then they replaced the Roman fort with a new castle, and hence the name, basically. But then that castle was again replaced. Of course, the Normans built every castle initially out of wood, but then in about the late 12th century, they realised that castles are much better if they're made out of stone. So they replaced the wooden castle with bits of what you see here. Is that safe to cross? Yeah. So what we're looking at here is actually the castle keep, so which was the main stronghold where the most important people would live, and it would be the safest part of the castle, and it would be surrounded by walls. Who lived in the castle? I'm honestly not quite sure as to whether it was a royal residence or not, actually. But on this side we've got the Black Gate, which was an addition, I believe, from the 13th century. And this gate here and the keep there are basically the remains of the castle. There was a because there's normally the case where during the Civil War castles would be slighted to prevent them from use again, or sometimes they just fall into disrepair anyway. But yeah, this is interesting because it's not a ruin per se, in the sense that you see other castles which are just shells of their former self, even though, well, it is kind of ruined, but you know what I mean. So, but the keep itself looks to be in a sort of a complete-ish state. So I'll give you a little look at it from this angle. And there is also a car park in the castle, which I don't believe there was back in the 12th century, but there we are. So again, shades of Carnarvon Castle with a car park here, and here it is, the Newcastle of Newcastle, as it were. So yeah, geographically it would have been in the same place where the Roman fort was, and horses would have made a prettier picture, yeah. But yeah, anyway. And so, again, we got a nice shot of the lantern tower poking through here with the black gate just here. And here's an interesting picture from circa 1890 of what this place would have looked like then. As you can see, the cathedral's still there, but the rest is a bit different. Maybe there was some slum clearance or something, and now it looks like this. But yeah, I'll take another little walk across this little mini bridge thing as we descend a little bit closer towards the river. There's a rare moment of quiet here in Newcastle, actually. Won't be like this for long though. I do love a good blue plaque, by the way. So now we're just going to descend towards the water level, as it were. And in the meantime, there's some interesting little bits and pieces artistically that I came across earlier today, and worth a little look. Oh, I should get another shot of the cathedral there. And so we've got these here. It looks like they're sort of reconstructions of authentic old posters from way back in the day. Some serious, some not quite as serious. So like this one here, times for the 7th of November 1805, Battle of Trafalgar, capture of French and Spanish fleets, death of Nelson, list of killed and wounded. And then we've got this one here, by order of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, so that'll be Elizabeth I, the corporation of the town of Newcastle-upon-Tyne are empowered to enter the bounds of the old castle and remove certain rogues who are in residence there. I love that. And then there's this old map from either medieval or Tudor times. And then this one's quite fun. Wylam hopping. Wylam's a village near here with where a famous person was from, which I'll get into. Monday the July 28th, blah blah. 1. A donkey race for half a guinea. 2. A donkey race for 5 shillings. The last ass to win. Each jockey to ride his neighbour's ass. Yeah, very serious business this, as you can see. But yeah, back in then, jockeys would ride their neighbour's ass, it would look like. But and then we've got various other ones as well. Yeah, rogues is an underrated word. It should bring that back into fashion, I think. And a bit more artwork here. Looks like a coin of Hadrian there. So now we're just walking down the street with quite an interesting name, quite a short name. And the name of this street is Side. Yeah, just Side. Now I don't know if that's the shortest street name in the country, but it must be up there. So there we go. And now we have the River Tyne just around the corner, so that gives me time to talk about, well, the village that I alluded to earlier called Wylam, just a bit west of here, and that was the birthplace of a certain George Stephenson back in the 18th century. And George would play a crucial role in, well, basically he was the father of the railways. And if anyone who's about my age or older will, you'll probably remember those old £5 notes with George Stephenson on the one side. And so his story goes that, well, the abbreviated version was that in 1825 his creation of the locomotive steam engine, i.e. self-propelling, it became the first one to, well, allegedly the first one to work, as it were. It was called Locomotion Number 1, and it was on the Stockton and Darlington Railway, two towns just a bit south of here. And that was because his, I suppose, benefactor was a Quaker named Edward Pease from Darlington. And Pease and Stephenson teamed up to create the first locomotive railway line in 1825. And then George Stephenson had a son, Robert Stephenson, and as Susan knows, that was Robert Stephenson came up with the rocket in, I believe, 1829, and that was put into use on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830, which I believe was the first intercity railway ever. And so both father and son from this neck of the woods, and one of the bridges in particular is closely related to Robert Stephenson, who was the engineer responsible for that. But of course we've got several bridges to talk about, not just the one looming up into shot now. So yeah, this just wait for a quieter spot as we approach the river. Also, while I'm here, I should probably just show you this nice old building for the old building fans out there. This one goes back quite a bit as well. It's one of the centre of the shot now. I believe that's genuine Tudor, but we've got a bit to unpack right now, because we have this rather iconic bridge, which will yeah, so we'll start with this one. This is, of course, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. No, it's not the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but it is does bear a striking resemblance to it, and that is apparently not a coincidence, because The firm responsible for the Sydney Harbour Bridge was also responsible for this one right here, the Tyne Bridge. And this one opened in 1928. Tyne! Oh, I've walked into it. So yeah, it was a company called Dorman Long that was responsible for both the Tyne Bridge here and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and whether one copied the other, it's not for me to say, I suppose, because who knows really. Well, I think they both might have been inspired by a bridge in New York actually, but that's again a matter of possibly speculation. But yeah, also the Great North Run was here just over the weekend, I believe. As takes place in Gateshead, which is the town just over the river, and I'll touch upon Gateshead shortly as well. Now, of course, there is the Tyne Bridge, but there are several iconic bridges in Newcastle, or effectively the boundary between Newcastle and Gateshead. So there's this one, the Swing Bridge, which is quite self-explanatory as to what it does. So, oh, they're running off. So, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Newcastle is similar to London in respect that the rivers there, consequently they had to have bridges that would accommodate for those. In the case of Tower Bridge in London, it has that seesaw thing going on. But in Newcastle, there are various alternative solutions. So with the Swing Bridge here, as you can probably guess, it swings around 300 from the 1870s there. And Mo Farah came fourth in his retirement race. Mo Farah, what a legend. Yeah, I saw hashtag #OneMoTime on the posters earlier, so I was wondering how he did. Yeah, I heard that. Hellgate Bridge, I think, is the name of the inspiration for Tyne Bridge. So, quite an ominous name, but anyway. So that is the Swing Bridge here, and then down this way. If we carry on, we go to the next bridge, which is earlier. George and Robert Stephenson were very key members of shaping the railways, and this right here is the product of Robert Stephenson's engineering. This is the high level bridge. Now, I don't know if we'll see it or not. It depends on what the trains are doing, but the idea is at the very top, the trains go along like so, and in the lower level, there are pedestrians. You may be able to see just at the distance there, and there's also traffic that goes in the middle of the lower level. So this bridge accommodates everyone essentially, and it dates from, just need to check the notes for the dates. Yeah, it's completed in 1849, I believe, and and before then the trains from London had to stop at Gateshead, i.e. the bit just over that way. So with the opening of this bridge, the trains could go on up into Edinburgh. This is part of the East Coast Main Line from King's Cross to Edinburgh, and also it means when you have trains going up there, it means anyone who's been through Newcastle on the train will know you get this lovely view of the Tyne Bridge and indeed the other bridges as you pass, or even as you pull into the station. And it's always nice to have some iconic scenery as you approach a town or a city by rail. And now there is another bridge in the distance, which I'll explain, but I touched upon Gateshead a few times, And that building just here, by the way, this is the Sage Gateshead. It's quite a modern building, opened I believe in 2004. I believe it's a concert venue, and yeah, it is one of the highlights of Gateshead architecturally. I don't know how to put that nicely, but Dorney got main trains from Sunderland to Newcastle when a teenager. Well, that's the other thing. They have the Tyne and Wear Metro now, so you can get to Sunderland on the metro system they got here. And Sunderland actually has a similar bridge to this, the Monk Weymouth Bridge. But Gateshead is the birth, and also there's a certain footballer who I've alluded to in the title of the stream, none other than Mr. Paul Gascoigne. And Paul Gascoigne, an iconic cultural figure football for anyone who grew up in the 90s like myself. He was from, as I say, Gateshead, but he played a little bit for Newcastle, but then he moved to some other clubs. Had a notable stint at Tottenham Hotspur, which is a long way from here, but exactly, Susan, he was well prone to bursting into tears, because there was a very famous incident in the World Cup of 1990. England were in the semi-final up against Germany, or was it West Germany then, I think, but yeah, and there's a rule in the World Cup, and maybe Euros as well, where if you accrue 2 yellow cards over multiple games, it means that you have to miss the next match. And yeah, just let me know if there's buffering there. So it meant that Paul Gascoigne did a little reckless challenge, and it meant that consequently he would miss the World Cup final on the supposition that England did qualify, and that really hit him in the moment. And yeah, we saw some waterworks there, and one thing I can say is that there's an easy way to tell the difference between real tears and crocodile tears, and that real tears come out when the person is visibly trying to stop themselves from crying, which was very evidently the case for poor old Gazza then. But England didn't make the final anyway in the end. They lost on penalties. Would you believe? England losing on penalties. That never happens. But he was in the news for kissing the king on the head. That's I think I'm missing some context there. Okay. But okay. And yeah, of course, Gascoigne famously put himself in a very more positive position culturally, shall we say, in 1996, when he scored one of the greatest goals of all time. And there's no hyperbole there. For those of you who have seen it will know. England versus Scotland in Euro 96. I can recommend you searching that for YouTube after the stream if you have a passing interest in football / soccer. And yeah, one of the most beautiful goals of all time, as England beat Scotland, I believe 2-0 in the group stages. And of course there are a few other famous football figures from Newcastle as well. There's Alan Shearer, and of course there's Bobby Robson, the legendary manager, Sir Bobby, who was the manager at the time of the 1990 World Cup. And in terms of other things culturally, when it comes to Newcastle, I couldn't refrain from mentioning Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which is it was well, it's first aired in the 80s, And just to explain the premise, it starts off with 3 bricklayers from Newcastle going abroad to Dusseldorf in Germany to get work there and send some money home. And from there they're joined by a motley crew of various people. There's another bricklayer from Bristol, I believe, played by Pat Roach, the legendary wrestler, and there's also an electrician played by Timothy Spall, no less. And of course Jimmy Nail, was one of the Geordies there. And then who else was there? There was the plasterer from Liverpool, and then there was the carpenter from London. And it's a great sort of fish out of water, I'd say, comedy, but it's not canned laughter, so in that sense it was very ahead of its time, but it was sort of comedy stroke drama. And it was one of the early instances of people with thick local dialects being used in something like this. Of course there was the Likely Lads before that, but that was a bit before my time, so I'm not quite sure, but yeah, so Jimmy Nail, Kevin Whately, is it Ian Healy, the other Geordie, and of course there's Timothy Spall, as I say, there's and Pat Roach, there was also the late Gary Holton, and was it Christopher Fairbanks, the played the Geordie? No, sorry, the Scouser. But anyway, so great television from back in the day there. And then the set used for the building site in the first series was repurposed as Albert Square in EastEnders. I believe that was in Boreham Wood, if I'm not mistaken, as part of the whole Elstree Studios complex. And now looming into shot is the Gateshead Millennium Bridge. Well, it's called the Millennium Bridge, but it didn't open until late 2001 because it was a bit late. But it is quite as modern bridges go, I think it's pretty fetching. And it's a footbridge, and I believe it's got a mechanism where it sort of does a little wink if it needs to let a tall ship through. And appropriately enough, they're playing Money for Nothing on the radio there. I won't get in too close in case the copyright people will get wind of it, but Money for Nothing, of course, is a Dire Straits song, who are a Newcastle band. Morse's partner, and yeah, just great acting calibre all round. But yeah, so Dire Straits, who might have heard a snippet of there, came from here. There's Mark and his brother David Knopfler, and a couple of others. Money for Nothing and Chicks for Free, indeed. And yeah, and another band that came from Newcastle is Lindisfarne, whose name comes, of course, from the holy island of Lindisfarne, a bit north of here and off the coast. And they did a very interesting song called Fog on the Tyne, where they sang about how the fog all the time is all mine, all mine. And in I think it was the early 90s, Paul Gascoigne, who I mentioned earlier, did his own interpretation of the Fog all the time is all mine song. And again, it was quite hilarious. I still don't know exactly what it means, fog on the tyne is all mine, but something to do with collectivism of being a Geordie or something, I'm not sure. Is that why Sting sang I Want My MTV? Yes, I believe, yeah, they probably would have known each other from that from that geographical closeness. Also, what I learned very interestingly from a channel called Professor of Rock is that the I Want My MTV riff was based on Don't Stand So Close to Me riff from the song of the same name by the Police. And I never picked up on that until I saw that video about it about a year or so ago. So if anyone watches the Professor of Rock, that's a great YouTube channel. And of course, Jimmy Nail, who we mentioned earlier from Alf Vivid Design Pet, he also had quite a respectable musical career as well. He had, didn't he have a #1 with Ain't No Doubt or something? And he did a few other songs. Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Oh, super generous. Thank you. Yeah, the bridge does look very nice at night time. The only sign for me is that my coach leaves in about just over an hour, so as much as I'd like to show you the bridge at night, I don't want to leave myself stranded here, but we can enjoy the rather calm waters of the Tyne on this fine evening here. Crocodile tears, or was it crocodile shoes, or was it Love Don't Live Here Anymore, something like that? Rings a bell. Yeah, thanks Elizabeth, thank you. But yeah, it's just like Newcastle, it's hard to describe. It's got a certain energy to it whenever you come here. Well, you can see why people are so passionate about it, but not in an arrogant way, if that makes sense. Oh, Deirdre, thank you. Yeah. And like I say, so this side of the river is Gateshead, which is a separate town, as it were. So a lot of people miscaption their photos as Newcastle, but this one is essentially Gateshead that we are looking at now. Yeah, and thanks for the kind words, everyone. And it is a pleasure, especially when things behave, touch wood, on the streaming app front, which seems to be the case today. So I don't have any concrete plans as to what to do next, but I do still have the Isle of Wight to get to at some point. I'll see if we can arrange something for that. I'll also have to look at the weather forecast as well, because I don't want to go there when it's grey and what have you. But like I say, just if you're interested in where I'll go to next, just keep an eye out on the channel, and I'll try and post on the forum on Facebook for those who know me from Hago as well. So I think it's I shall probably wrap it up there, and so again, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll just flip the camera just customary to say so thanks again for coming to this tour of Newcastle and Gateshead over there as well. But so I'll keep you posted as to other tours, and I've got some 4K videos coming up as well. Of course, I'm keeping those churning out nicely. So like I said, I did some very pretty towns in Northumberland earlier today, so I'll get those processed. Am I near Cumbria? Well, right now, Natalie, if you're asking, Cumbria is just a bit west of where I am now. It's kind of like the same amount of north, but just west, sort of west coast, if that makes sense. But I'm not based in Cumbria, if that's what you're asking. I'm based in London, so but Cumbria is an absolutely beautiful county, and I'll perhaps get back there at some point. But anything, anyway, in closing, I'll leave you with this shot of the River Tyne, and there's no fog at the moment, but if it were, I could claim that the fog on the Tyne is all mine. But for now, I'll just say all the very, very best, and I'll see you when I see you, and have a great evening, morning, afternoon, whichever, and until the next time, take care and goodbye.